Joining us now, members of the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, Democratic Senators Tim Kaine of Virginia and Michael Bennet of Colorado. This week, the two senators introduced legislation that would create a public health care option to go along with the Affordable Care Act. Gentlemen, good morning. I want to talk about that in just a second, but Senator Kaine, let me start with you on the question we've been discussing quite a bit this morning, and that is the question of what exactly happened in Niger when we lost those 4 American soldiers, including Sergeant LaDavid Johnson, who's been at the center of all this controversy over the last couple of days. Can you bring us up to speed on what they were doing there, why Sergeant Johnson was left there for almost 2 days, and what exactly happened that day, and why you believe the president's response in offering at least condolences took so long?
Willie, there's still a lot of questions we have to answer about this. I'm on the Armed Services Committee as well,
right,
and we're digging into trying to get answers about it. I mean, the reason we're in Niger is because of this escalating war against ISIS. ISIS has claimed credit for this particular attack, and that 2001 authorization, which said we could go after the perpetrators of the 9/11 attack 2 years before there was even an ISIS, is now being used to justify military action all over the world. As you know, I've been calling on my colleagues to try to refine that authorization, and let's be really clear about what we're doing. So there's sort of a surreptitious and covert element to this. The White House drafted a condolence statement and then chose not to put it out. They were sort of trying, I think, to kind of lowball that we're involved in Niger, and that's part of what's going on. But what we need to do is we need to bring this to light to the American public about how many countries the U.S. is engaging in military activity now on the basis of the 2001 authorization.
Okay, Senator Kaine, let's pick up on that. I mean, we're all over the world with Special Operations Forces, in the Philippines, in South America, in Africa. How many countries are we involved with?
Well, it would be scores and scores of countries, Mike, if you're just talking about training or special forces folks on the ground training militaries on virtually every continent. The question is, in how many countries are we involved in combat activity? And look, you're probably talking about a dozen where we're involved in military kinetic activity of some kind, using the 2001 authorization as the justification for it. 75% of the folks in Congress never voted on that authorization, and those who were here and voted on it, they didn't think it was going to be applying to these military actions all over the world.
Senator Bennet, let me ask you about health care and this legislation that you have co-sponsored with Senator Kaine, calling for a public option, a term that was very familiar around the Obamacare debate several years back. Why do you think now is the time, and will you have the votes to get that through?
Well, I think I've always believed a public option should have been part of the Affordable Care Act. We tried to get it done then, and we weren't able to do it. Tim and I have both heard from our constituents, especially in rural Colorado and rural Virginia, that it's just unreasonable to force people to buy insurance when there is no competition, price is high, the deductible is high, and that people want to have an option. And so that's what this very strong public option, Medicare X, is all about. We're going to start rolling it out in rural parts of our states, or the proposition is roll it out in rural parts of the states, and then have everybody have access to it in about 3 years. Whether we'll pass it, that is an interesting question, because virtually nothing can pass these days in the Congress. I think that as part of an attempt to actually resolve the issues that people are having, not so much with Obamacare, but with the American healthcare system, this ought to be part of the solution to that, and I am optimistic that we will be able ultimately to get it passed. I'm very pleased to have Tim as our co-sponsor here, because I think that brings a lot of credibility to the bill.
And Senator Kaine, your colleague in the Democratic caucus there, Senator Patty Murray, has been working with Lamar Alexander on a bipartisan health care plan that would stabilize short-term the insurance markets. And we saw what President Trump has had to say about that, several different positions over the last couple of days. And my question for you is whether you think you can trust this president as a deal maker, and what are you hearing from your colleagues in the Senate, including those across the aisle, about his inconsistencies?
Well, there's great inconsistency, but here's what we're trying to do. And Michael's been part of this deal-making effort with Lamar and Patty. We all have been. When the skinny repeal vote failed in July, that effort to take insurance away from 20 million people, we started to work on a bipartisan proposal to stabilize the individual insurance market. We owe it to the American public to show them after 7 years that we can do something in health care on a bipartisan basis. And I'm really gratified that Lamar and Patty have put this deal on the table to stabilize it with the payments that help people afford their co-pays and deductibles, and also giving states flexibility. 6 Republicans have already come out and say that they support this deal. Many Democrats are supporting it, and I think we can get this passed as part of some larger legislation this year. And then we move on to the bigger question of what do we do to fix health care going forward. I think our bill is a solution there. But look, the president's backing and forthing on this, as on so many other things, is sort of making them a little bit irrelevant to the discussions in the Senate.
Right.
We're moving ahead on trying to find bipartisan solutions, and we're not going to let tweets get in our way.
If I could just add to that, there is nobody in the Senate that I have more confidence in than Lamar Alexander as a legislator. And he and Patty Murray are responding to the testimony we heard on our committee in a bipartisan way that universally called for the things that are in this bill that they've written. So it would be a shame if we didn't use this opportunity to pass this bill, stabilize the markets, and President Trump's attempts to sabotage the Affordable Care Act have been useless to people living in Colorado. This bill would help us.
Well, let's hope. I'm curious, Senator Tim Kaine, for the second morning in a row, the president is starting his day with tweets about Hillary Clinton, your running mate. He fired off another tweet just minutes ago, writing uranium deal to Russia with Clinton help and Obama administration knowledge is the biggest story that fake media doesn't want to follow. What do you think, what do you make of this sort of yearning obsession with Hillary Clinton? It's, it's sad, but also a little frightening at this point.
Look, there's a moral vacuum in the White House right now. And when the president feels under pressure on other issues, he'll revert back to attacking Hillary or bragging about the size of the inauguration crowd. And you know, the thing that's sad about all of these instances, whether it's this or whether it's the dust up yesterday with the family of this poor soldier that was killed in Niger, is, you know, what we're seeing is that Americans elected somebody promising greatness when there was no evidence of goodness. And we're relearning a very, very painful lesson, which is there can't be greatness without goodness, but that's what's lacking right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's old saying, America is great because America is good, and when it ceases being good, it will cease to be great. But I am curious, though, Senator Kaine, do you ever wake up any mornings with an instinct or an urge to tweet about Mike Pence? Because after all, you ran against him 11 months ago, and I'm just wondering if you have some of the same urges. Have some of the same urges that Donald Trump has.
You know, no. I mean, I have my vices, but the desire to tweet early in the morning is certainly not on my vice list.
But I would say, though, this attack, this daily attack on edited content, on curated content, on the leading journalists and leading news outlets in this country by this president is something the American people cannot stand for. The democracy cannot work if people lose faith in journalism. And the president knows that, which is why he starts every day attacking the leading journalists in this country. We can't stand for it.
Hey, before we let you guys...
well, you know, he, of course, I want to thank you guys for being with us. And Mika, he tweeted, of course, about this morning because it was covered on Fox and Friends, which, of course, he watches, as well as this show, apparently, if you judge his tweets. But he does not get briefings. He does not get regular briefings. His briefings come from watching, watching cable news, and that is as somebody that works in that profession, that is truly frightening. I know a lot of people who work in cable news, and you don't want to get your White House briefings from Mike Barnicle or me. But think about this fact, though, that here we are 11 months after the election. Election's over. He's still attacking the opponent that he won with the electoral votes. I guess he's still angry that he lost a popular vote by over 3 million votes. But we have over 70% of Americans afraid of a war, a possible nuclear war. We've got 1/6 of the economy hanging by a thread. We have health care reform going down the drain. We have the president trying to pass a budget. We have the senators and the congressmen trying to get a fix on tax reform. We've got all of these things going on. We've got an Iran nuclear deal, again, hanging in the balance. We've got a Dreamers deal hanging in the balance. We've got all of these things ahead of us, and the president is tweeting about a political opponent from a year ago. It is
I'm just telling you, if
inexplicable.
this guy worked for a small company in the Midwest, he'd be dragged out. There'd be an intervention.
He would be fired if the guy was a CEO at a. Oh yeah, if the guy was anything, if he worked in a church, if he worked in a synagogue, if he worked in a small business, if he worked in a mid-sized business, if he worked in a large corporation, if he were the coach of a football team, a high school football team,
he'd be out.
He would be fired. And yet, here he is, the President of the United States, and people in my former party won't even stand up to him other than Jeff Flake and one or two others.
Coming up, brand new video from Florida where officials are bracing for potential clashes ahead of a speech by the white supremacist who organized that deadly rally in Charlottesville.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.